Thanks for joining us on the Path to Tech podcast, where we explore fascinating stories and insights from tech industry professionals and entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Vishal Sapkota. Today, we're excited to have Dante St. James, a multifaceted expert in the world of entrepreneurship, digital marketing, personal branding, and technology. Dante is a director at Darwin Innovation Hub. The Darwin Innovation Hub is a co-working space and innovation ecosystem located in the heart of Darwin's CBD. Dante is also a renowned speaker, trainer, coach, and a technologist who helps business owners and entrepreneurs succeed in the digital landscape. He frequently runs training for Meta and LinkedIn all over Australia. Dante is also a friend of Skillaroo and trains our students in our Career Ready program. Today, Dante joins us to share his insights, experiences, and valuable advice on how to navigate the ever-evolving world of technology and business. Dante, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here. I'm looking forward to getting stuck into it.
Amazing. Dante, we had a few chats before recording this today, and like I told you earlier, I really find everything that you've got your hands on fascinating. You have quite a fascinating resume, and I'd love to hear more about your journey. What was the turning point that led you to focus on sort of entrepreneurship and empowering businesses and business owners?
I got a really full-on LinkedIn resume, I think. It's so much in there, and I've gone back as far as the first, probably what I call my most relevant starting point, which was when I was working with call centers for telecommunications companies while I was still at university. And what I was studying at university was medicine. I was originally going to be a doctor. I was a smart kid, got some great marks, and thought, well, you either become a doctor or a lawyer when you've got great marks. Engineering wasn't as established a career path back then. It certainly wasn't seen as something that people would be as status oriented around as, say, medicine or law. So I took the path of medicine because, and the only reason I did that was because the TV shows that I saw that had doctors in it were more appealing to me than the TV shows I saw about lawyers. I found the work looked more interesting, which is not a great decision making process to go through. But at 17 years old, you're not really in a position to make a decision about the rest of your life path. Things are likely to go very differently than what you think you will. So the journey probably started there, I think. Eventually, I worked way too many jobs at the time, got myself into lots of trouble at university, barely scraped through, got 3 years into practicing as a psychiatric registrar, which is someone who basically a doctor of psychiatric medicine in hospitals, and realized that I can't do this for the rest of my life. So I was left with this hole inside my life of, I've just spent 8 years studying. I've just spent 3 years practicing at a career that I don't like. Now what do I do? So I had to just go with what I already had. My workplace that I was doing to help pay my school fees was willing to take me on for more hours, eventually taking me on full time, which then led from a customer service role into a technical support role. They seemed to think I had a great aptitude for technology, which I kind of did. I've been playing around on a Commodore 64 in the 90s and programming my own games in BASIC and getting like into Apple script, a very early Apple script, and learning to create macros and actions within computers. So I wasn't completely foreign or alien to computers and to technology, but I'd never really thought of it as a career. In fact, there wasn't really much a career for that. Computers were for enthusiasts and nerds and geeks, and I didn't self-identify as any of those things back then. So picking that up and deciding that I actually was quite good at this took a whole new direction in life. Of course, this is around the time of the Y2K bug. So the whole world was geared towards rewriting systems and software to be able to cope with the churning over of January 1, 2000. And whilst that seems like a long time ago, it's 24 years ago now, 24 and a half years ago now, that was a very major onboarding and on-ramping for many people who are just getting into technology. There was jobs going at there was no way that you could be an IT professional and be out of work back then, no matter what level of experience you had. You could literally step out of an IT degree, and there was only a few of them around in those days that existed in universities, and step straight into a job because the industry was so hungry for that talent. Now then, of course, that happened, and everyone got pushed back out again. So all those contracts, those thousands and thousands and thousands of contracts, became open again, and we all needed to look for other jobs. I took this as an opportunity to change careers. At that time, I decided to become a radio presenter. So I spent a couple of years volunteering to learn how to work on radio. For me, communication was always a strong skill. In fact, it was in one of those call centers that a fellow customer service rep said, "The way you speak, you should be on radio." And I thought, well, I kind of thought about that when I was a kid. Maybe I can try that out. So having a little bit of downtime, I decided to try that out. Then getting my first job full-time in a radio position in Darwin, which is what brought me from Sydney, where I grew up, into Darwin. And from there, I spent 13 and a half years working in a radio network and various things, although most of it was actually spent making websites and forming social media properties for those radio stations. Because we're talking about, from 2003, whereas Facebook's just starting to come around about 2007, 2008. We were looking at MySpace back at about 2006. So it wasn't like there was ever a shortage of something new to bring into those traditional media environments. So I found myself back after doing a slight diversion into radio, finding myself back in technology yet again, having to then find new ways of coding. So back then it was all HTML, PHP, CSS, having to learn those languages, and being, I guess, not someone who could code from scratch, but someone who could take open source code and make the changes that you need to make on a WordPress site. Or back then it was more likely to be Joomla, was the technology I mostly worked with. And then, other weird and wonderful PHP-based LAMP stack CMSs like Geeklog, and there's so many of them. At the time, Drupal as well was one that I used to play around with. So that was bringing us into the technology phase. So we're looking at about career number 3 right now that I've gone through. And I think what brought the entrepreneurial side was in 2017, I found myself out of a job for the first time in my adult life. I'd never, ever not had work. And it's simply, I'd reached the end of my time with that particular radio network. And I had a choice. I had a great big payout that I could go with, and I had a choice whether I just go and get another job just like the one I had, or use this opportunity with a bit of money behind me and a bit of time behind me to do something else. And I just started listening to a lot of Gary Vaynerchuk, a lot of Gary V. And I don't know how I came across him, but at the time I was very impressed by this idea that you can take control of your life, be your own boss. And I felt quite burnt from that previous job. After 13 and a half years, I was very unceremoniously kind of pushed out, basically told that if I don't leave of my own accord, they will find a reason to make me go. And I thought that just felt bizarre, like after 13 and a half years of loyalty and hard work, that I'd be in that position. So I didn't really want to get another job. I now didn't trust employers. This was the 3rd time I've been through a redundancy. I was very lucky. I always had skills I could jump into another job. But I now felt totally burned by the idea of being employed. I thought being employed it's a mug's game. It's a fool's errand, because you have no control whatsoever over your life. You got one source of income, one singular source of income, which I'd realized was it's a single point of failure in your life plan. If you've got big dreams, you've got what do things, you want to get married, have a house, have kids, and you're relying on one single source of income, that's a really vulnerable and dangerous place to be. And I thought, well, I don't want to be in this role anymore. So I went through the process of being an entrepreneur, which did not go particularly well. I began my own startup with no experience, no idea of what advice was out there, no idea that was even services or government programs that could help you to do these things. I just went out based upon a few podcasts I'd listened to and a few YouTube videos and thought, let's try this out. It failed spectacularly. Within 6 months, I'd lost all the money that I had left over. Absolutely horrific. And that's when I think things turned around, and I realized that there has to be a better way of connecting people like myself who want to go through a career change or want to try something new, and hooking them up with really good, solid advice, mentoring, information, and then pathways onto programs that can help them. So government programs or whatever it takes to be able to start a good business, validate an idea to make sure people actually want what you want to produce, and then going through a process to produce that. There had to be a way of doing this. Turns out there was, and that's what has brought me to now of trying to help others to not do that. Now, mind you, it doesn't sound, I didn't come from a point of failure to do all this. I've since had 7 other businesses, sold 2, bought another 2, got another one I'm starting up next month. So I'm a serial entrepreneur. But the point was that I had to go through a great big loss from my own ignorance to get to that point. And what I wanted is just for others to never have to go through that major loss first, to get to the point where they have at least a viable product or a viable path forward as a business owner.
That's awesome. And thanks to that journey that a lot of people have you to thank for being there to help them with their businesses as well. I know that at Darwin Innovation Hub, as your role of a director, you work with businesses and entrepreneurs and help them succeed digitally. Can you talk a little bit more about that? And what does your typical week look like at Darwin Innovation Hub? What are the things that you're associated with?
Well, like I said, I've got like a whole lot of things going on now. So it's not just Darwin Innovation Hub. There's like 7 other businesses all running concurrently. So it's a very busy week, as you could probably understand. My week as my role at the Innovation Hub, my contract is as a director of innovation and investment readiness, which kind of tells you a little bit about what the role is. It's to look for and encourage innovation in the entrepreneurs all around us. So they don't have to be just in Darwin, they could be anywhere. Excuse me, it's clear my throat. So these people don't have to be just in Darwin, they can be pretty much anywhere. Mm-hmm. What we look for is ideas that have a sort of novelty to them, that are investable, scalable, they have a desirability in the market, and that there is something where we can look at a potential for them to become something that we as investors could invest in, because probably most people don't realize this, that Innovation Hub in our case isn't just an incubator for ideas or an acceleration to take those ideas through to commercialization, but we are also the commercializator. So we are the investor. So we're a venture capital firm with a philanthropic project to develop those businesses, and kind of very similar if you've come across to the Y Combinator model, which mm-hmm. includes a certain amount of investment and access to investment to develop those ideas. So it's one of those places where I've spent probably the last 5 years before turning up at the hub working in government supported programs to help people to start businesses and to help them to digitize and put a kind of digital transformation in their businesses to accelerate things. But I'd always hit a blank brick wall, especially with people starting businesses, because you get to a certain point and you go, well, now you need money. And we go, okay, see you later, go and find some money. And it's a very awkward moment where every business needs that. You can only bootstrap and use free tools to a certain point, and then you need to start paying for things, right? So this connection that we're on is paid for. All the tools that I'm using, the Microsoft Word document that I'm reading right now to help me to remind me of what to say, that is something I have to pay for. And I think we have this idea from YouTube gurus telling us do this, do that, and do it all for free. You can do that with all these free tools, but it trains us to be in a position where we think that we can do it all with no money. But that's not the reality, especially not if you've got an idea which has a global potential or even national potential to it. You're going to have to spend something at some point, and you probably don't have that money. Not many people have savings. It's a very rare person that has enough savings to live on. People don't have a rich mum and dad who can give them money just to start a risky business. So where does that money come from? And if the idea is good enough, big enough, scalable enough, investable enough, that's where an investor comes in. And as an investor, obviously I look for opportunities. This is why I'm in Cairns at the moment. So I'm actually on the road in Cairns at the Tropical Innovation Festival, which is an annual week of conference and meeting. And there's an investor dinner tonight where we go and basically have dinner with a whole bunch of people who have great ideas to see if there's a match. So I've got access to millions of venture capital over here, and now I've got access to a group of people who need that millions of venture capital to be able to get going. So that's part of what I do at the Darwin Innovation Hub. The other part is creating an ecosystem, because there's no use having a lot of money to invest in people, but no pipeline of people coming through. And you create a pipeline by making entrepreneurship something that's attractive, something that seems possible. My entire LinkedIn persona, my entire content creation on YouTube is all about encouraging people to take control of their own lives. Whilst I failed miserably in turn number 1 and didn't do too well in turn number 2, by the time I got to business number 3, I'd learned enough to succeed. And ever since then, I've not really had anything fail. Or certainly if they have failed, it's because I've looked at it and gone, this isn't moving fast enough, shut it down, and then move to the next thing. And I think that kind of thinking is something that needs to be encouraged. We're not taught to think like that. We're not taught to grow up like that. The entire school system, and I'll sound like a conspiracy theorist here, but the entire school system and college system and university system is really built to develop good employees. I would say the university system is not even doing that well at the moment, but there's, the vocational educational training, things like Skillaroo, for instance, is designed to make people really employable, because at the core of our economic activity is people getting jobs. Now, I foresee a future where the full-time job will almost not exist. Everything will be contracted, which means that everybody is a business owner. And that kind of having to organize things like your taxes, organize to pay yourself, your own superannuation, everything now coming back to yourself, an employer not doing those things for you. It takes a lot of education to take a population which is pretty much 60 to 70% is employees, and train them to do the same things that the 30 to 40% of contractors and gig workers and casual workers have learned to do for their lives as well. It's a world where you don't necessarily do one thing and get paid for that one thing, but you do 7 things like I do, or you do 2 things. You might do something from 9 to 5 and then something from 7 p.m. to 12 a.m. You'll do 2 things in your life, or 2 different things, the thing you do for someone else and the thing you do for yourself. It's usually in that thing you do for yourself that you find where the gold nuggets are, and that's what I like to encourage people to develop. But they can't develop that in isolation, because if you don't get things moving fast enough and it's just costing you money and costing you time and costing you your relationship, and you don't see any output that's valuable to you, you're going to give up. And what we don't want people having to do in this world, a world where there's infinite problems to be solved, and a world where if we don't solve them, the repercussions are quite drastic. What we need to do is encourage people to continue on that path, to show them that there is help, there is assistance, and there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and there's potentially a lot of economic value to them as well. There's money to be made. There's a lifestyle to be generated. And I'm not talking about, playing golf every day and sailing on a yacht every weekend. I don't think many of us actually want that lifestyle. It's whatever the lifestyle is for you. It could be a life where you don't have to worry about whether your kids can afford to be put through a private school, or you don't have to worry about whether you can feed your kids, or whether you should have that extra baby, or whether you should go on that holiday, or whether you should maybe try and move to another city. You just want to be able to do things with a comfortable assurance that, yes, we can do this, not only because we've got the money, but because we've now got courage, and we can take more of what people would obviously think are risky moves in life and just go with it, just do it. And that's what entrepreneurship is. It's not just facing risk and laughing at it. It's taking calculated steps forward, but never sitting still. You're always trying to do something else and something new.
Yeah. Awesome. Hey, look, as a founder myself of 2 pretty young businesses, I really resonate with the fact that having a job can be a single point of failure, especially with so many unlimited desires we have that we expect from life. One thing though that has been challenging for me is just being able to give enough time, energy, and attention to each of the things that I'm involved in. And with you, your role at Diamond Innovation Hub, and like you said, being a serial entrepreneur and starting businesses and growing them, how do you do it all? What's your superpower?
Calendars, just blocking time and making sure that that I have a really good calendar system. So I use an AI powered calendar called Motion. So not Notion, the note taking app, but Motion with an M. And that has been my savior. It takes in, I've got 17 calendars now for all the different things I do, from the rostering for the 3 cafes that I own in North Queensland, through to, my training business, to my own home and family roster, to the Darwin Innovation Hub stuff. And so I can't really have a situation where I don't know what to go to next. So I have to have something reliable. So Motion's been excellent for that, because it takes all those calendars into one place and then allows people to book my time through Motion as well, which you can see it has the visibility of everything. It sees what's available across all my calendars and can do that. And then if I miss a task that's in Motion as well, it then moves it to the next available slot. So if I've allowed myself 15 minutes to write a social media post tomorrow at 2 p.m. and I don't get that done and I haven't marked it off, it'll move it to the next available time, which could be perhaps Wednesday at 9 a.m. And it does that automatically for me. So I don't have to keep shifting and shafting things around. I can be assured when I wake up in the morning and look at my calendar, I know what's going to happen in my day. And that sort of coordination is what we used to use personal assistants for. So that has been the core of what's really got me organized, particularly in the last 12 months, as everything has accelerated to the point that it has, that I'm taking on more and more and more. The other thing is too, that entrepreneurship isn't for everybody, and you have to be a certain kind of person to do that. A certain kind of person who's willing to give up some of the pleasures of life in order to make an investment of a year or two to get something going. And that means that I can't do as many things as I would like to. I don't have the time to sit and binge watch Star Trek: The Next Generation for 3 days, because yeah, right. As much as I'd love to, that's not something I can do, because there's so much stuff to be done. So what you need to do is you lose a little bit of spontaneity in life. It's not like someone can just say, hey, let's meet up for beers. Let's go out for a coffee. It's like, actually, I'm not available for coffee for 2 weeks. And that sort of spontaneity loss, whilst that is something which I first struggled with because I thought it made me a very boring person, I realized that what it makes the other person is a very boring person. They've got so much free time available to them. They have no idea what to do with that free time. So they annoy all the busy people in life, say, let's go for beers, let's go for coffee, let's go fishing, let's go watch some shows. I'm like, man, I've got shit to do. I got stuff I want to get done. So yeah, sure, we can do that, but it'll be in about 2 to 3 weeks time at 2 p.m. on a Thursday. How does that sound? And by then they're like, okay, let's do it. And that you're going to lose friends. And that's one of the things that they say, that entrepreneurship is a very lonely journey. I found it to be the opposite. It's certainly not. What you tend to do is that a lot of people who are your government employed, 8 a.m. to 4:21 p.m. That's a very famous Northern Territory thing, I think. So the 4:21 finish, and they do nothing else. They might volunteer for a kids' soccer club or something like that. But the reality is they don't have a side gig. They don't have other interests outside of that. They tend to get home from work. They do whatever they do with the kids, and then they'll sit down and watch TV until they fall asleep. And they'll wake up the next morning, go to work, and repeat the same cycle over and over again. Saturday morning, they'll take the kids out to sport, to ballet, to their interests, do some shopping at the local shopping center, come back, and by the time they get to about Sunday afternoon, they're dreading having to go back to work again on Monday. They're not enjoying their Sunday because they're worried about Monday, because they're doing work they don't love. They're doing work for someone else that they don't even like. And they're doing all this to just keep this perpetual cycle turning. And I'm thinking that to me sounds way worse than having to say no to a few parties and invitations to go to coffee. To me, that's it. And the other thing is too, that I'm probably uniquely geared for entrepreneurship because I'm ADHD, like quite severe ADHD, that if I don't have everything organized and ready to go and planned for me, if I don't keep myself busy, I go to chaos. I go to a place where of just utter mess. So when I have a scheduled life and I follow that scheduled life, kind of like a child, when I have a scheduled life, things go well for me. My behavior is right. I'm achieving things. I'm getting things done. I'm kicking goals. I'm happy. I'm fulfilled. But when I don't have things to do, that's when things go horribly wrong. It's where I just start looking. It's like almost like a look for trouble, like a teenager who's bored. I go looking for trouble, and trouble for me usually is going and looking for highly risky business ideas that seem really cool because some guy on YouTube, which I've been watching because I've been bored, has told me to do. So that superpower is ADHD. Second superpower is having a calendar that runs your life. And the third one is really, I guess, the ability to be able to very easily say no to things that I know are not helpful towards my goals. Does that make me boring? I don't know. I have 7.5 or nearly 8,000 people on LinkedIn that don't think that I'm boring, so I'm pretty happy with that.
Yeah, that's wonderful. You're also self-selecting the people that you build your life around, right? Like you probably are choosing other fellow entrepreneurs or other investors or people who are in this ecosystem, rather than who just are happy with their 9 to 4 21.
Yeah. And I have to make sure people understand there's nothing wrong with that life. Absolutely nothing wrong with it. In fact, as I said, 60 to 70% of people live that life, and it's nothing wrong with it. It's helping people to buy houses, cars, to be consumers, to be able to raise children, to be able to have interests, to have what are generally joyful lives. So there's nothing wrong with that. But for some of us, we've got to splinter our mind a bit like the Matrix, and we need to take the pill that's going to take us to see the truth about ourselves. And most people just walk through life having really no idea about the kind of person they are. They've never had to question that because their path through life is very much determined for them. I think if you don't choose what you want to do in life, if you don't choose the steps you take, if you don't choose the role you want to fulfill in life, then the role will be chosen for you and the path will be chosen for you. And to me, that's intolerable. I don't want a life where it's all determined by somebody else.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for that, Dante. So the next thing I want to talk about is entrepreneurship. I know you sort of touched on that before, but I just want to explore it a bit further because you work with entrepreneurs in a variety of your roles through training, through Darwin Innovation Hub and the like. So what do you find most appealing about entrepreneurship and working with entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I think it's the journey of taking someone from a place of fear and a lot of misinformation about what entrepreneurship is. I think everybody's heard that myth that 3/4 of all people who start a business fail within the first year, and the numbers vary wildly, and none of them are correct. In fact, any business that folds itself in the first year generally hasn't got to the point where it even was a business to begin with. It was just an activity that someone put against an ABN. So I think that's one of that's probably a big misconception that people have about entrepreneurship. But the appeal to entrepreneurship for me is that it's the only way I can see forward to be able to do the work I want to do with the people I want to work with in the time frames that I want to work with, from any place that I want to work from. And that to me is so appealing. So here I am at a conference in Cairns this week. Last weekend, I took a long weekend in Brisbane to see my family. Over the Christmas and New Year period in December and January, I'll spend 6 weeks living with my parents, who are now in their 80s, spending valuable time with my family at a stage of their life where they really want to see their son and I really want to see them, where there's so much to be shared. I can't do that if I'm not in control of my own calendar. When someone else controls your calendar, someone else controls your time, you don't have that flexibility. This is not a boast, and this is certainly not me saying how successful I am. It's anything but, really. I do this for my own sanity. But on the 26th of January, 26th of December each year, I go and book a whole bunch of flights because all the airlines have what they call their Boxing Day sales. And so I go and book the next year's worth of flights. So even though I might have spent a small fortune on family and friends over Christmas, I always set aside a few $1,000s to book cheap flights. And so what I did this year was to book a flight to somewhere every single month of this year. So I found that once I got back from visiting my family in January, I then had February where I went off to, where did I go to February? I think I was here in Cairns, or no, Bali. I went to Bali in February. And then and I worked from Bali. I spent a week working from Bali, getting some extra tattoos, going and seeing some great sites, visiting a temple, seeing friends that I had there, doing all the wonderful things you like to do when you're in Bali. But I worked from a hotel room. So I still worked, but I worked from a place that I want to work from. Going from March, April, May, June, this month I'm in Cairns. I've been in Brisbane. Next month I'm going back to Bali. August I'm off to another conference in Karratha in Western Australia. We're going to double that with another long weekend at my parents in Brisbane. And you're looking at this going, this is crazy. Like, how often do you fly around? I do that for my sanity, because I can't sit in one place all the time doing the same thing over and over and over. The most appealing thing about entrepreneurship for me is that I get the flexibility to do that. So I've worked to a point now where I have an understanding with each contract that I take on that I'm not always going to be sitting in their office. I'm not always going to be here, but I will be very present and very focused on what I'm doing when I'm doing that for them. But that I do share my time with other things, because there are other things I want to do. Now, that predicates that I actually am doing good work for them. So you can't just have all this wonderful flexibility and flying around Australia and enjoying your life and going to Bali for a week and working from a nice hotel. You can't do that without doing good work first. So you do have to still have good work and a good reputation and a good track record to get that kind of flexibility. I'm at a very blessed part of my life. I just turned 50 yesterday, so as this is being recorded. So I'm at a point in my life where many people say, you're at the peak of your career. And I'd say, well, actually, no, I might have reached a peak in life, but I've certainly got a long way yet to climb until I reach the places that I want to reach. The appealing part is that freedom to be able to do the things you want to do, work with the people you want to work with, on the work you want to do, from places that you want to work from, without being told what your calendar needs to be. Now, there has to be a bit of reasoning in that. No one truly is completely free of the obligations of others. We do live lives we're not islands in the middle of an ocean. We do live our lives with other people and with things. I've got a partner, I've got a family, I've got people who pay me for my time. They expect an output from me. So that for me is the most appealing thing. I can work for the Darwin Innovation Hub. I can work for the Paspalis Innovation Investment Fund. I can run Clickstarter, Speakstarter, the Mail Founder. I can own 3 cafes, and I can then also have a new training business that I'm developing and have a digital agency that I'm growing as well at the same time. I can have all those things. And then also take on a contract to do training for Meta, and then do some training for LinkedIn and for Google as well, if that comes up. So having that kind of flexibility where I can go, yes, I'm going to be in Sydney this week doing some daytime work at Facebook. So I'm learning how to become the trainer for the next year for them. That's fine. But what I'll do in the evenings while I'm in Sydney, rather than walking around and having photos via the Opera House and enjoying all the nightclubs of Sydney, what I'll do is stay in my hotel room and do the work that I normally would do during the day. So there is an offset for that. But it does mean that you still get to live a very exciting life. You get to live a life that is, not as stable as some people might want it to be. But for me, it maintains mental stability, being able to move around like that. That's what's most appealing, I think.
That's an amazing answer, and I totally relate to that. To me, one thing that comes to my mind when I think about the jobs that I've had over the last 5-6 years is, in all those roles, I felt like I could be contributing more. There's multitude of talents that I have, and I'm only being asked to do this specific thing as a software engineer, and that didn't feel rewarding enough for me, and which is what sort of drew me to entrepreneurship as well. You mentioned working with Facebook and training for the next year. I know that you do a lot of work in digital marketing and personal branding and just identity of businesses and people both, right? So one thing that I wanted to ask you was about digital marketing, and how does digital marketing help a young business or a young entrepreneur who are sort of trying to roll something out? Can you talk about any experience that you might have had about where digital marketing really worked well and they sort of had a product market fit for the digital marketing that they did, not for the business itself. Can you describe any such instance?
Yeah, so the first one that comes to mind is really one of my own cafes, to be honest. Having a business that you can sort of test out theories on is really good. So this particular cafe in North Queensland was known as a tradie cafe. It was a place where tradies would get bacon and egg rolls in the morning and get a coffee. The coffee didn't have to be particularly good. But what we want to do is attract some more office workers who were nearby into that cafe as well. So apart from doing all the work of making it look more appealing for that demographic, I was set about going, okay, how do we now let people know about this? You could drop flyers into the office, but it's a government building that's nearby, so they probably wouldn't feel too great about that. So what we did is just go, okay, let's use the platforms that we know that those people are on. So they're going to be on LinkedIn, they're going to be Instagram, they're going to be Facebook. Everything else is kind of, whatever. You'll get like little edge cases of people using Pinterest, and someone over there might use X or Twitter or Mastodon or Blue Sky, but really it's going to be the meta platforms and it's going to be LinkedIn that they're going to be on. So we put our presence on those places. There was no presence on them in the first place, and then back that up with advertising. And those advertising was simply around the getting in the heads of where those people are at. So we know, for instance, that office workers are likely to hit up their cafe just before work, at morning tea, and again at lunchtime. After that, it kind of fades a little bit. You're not selling a lot of coffee or bacon and egg rolls. So that's the sort of thing you're selling earlier in the day. So what we do is get into their feeds as we know they're commuting to work. They're commuting to work. They're scrolling through their Facebook and Instagram feeds. They suddenly pop up. Here is, did you know that you can get this? While you're on your way to work, feeling tired. So we'd actually get in the heads of who they are. So it's Monday morning and an ad would go out on Monday morning. Still dreaming of Sunday, get into your Monday with a coffee, and here's a 10% discount. So giving people an opportunity to try it out. That to me was probably one of the best examples of a successful campaign that increased our patronage by nearly 70%. Like that was in just 2 weeks. That was so quick, so easy, and all we did was gave a 10% discount, which didn't really cut that much into our margin. It cut it down by maybe, it was 10% less than we normally make out of them. That was fine to get them in for that first coffee. After that, you got people who work in the area, walk past you every day. We're near a bus stop, so we're the natural point of places where people would jump out and do that. But because we used to look like a tradie cafe, they wouldn't come into us. They thought that's not a place for us. So a little bit of window dressing, but a lot of marketing to show that we're not just a tradie cafe, and that made all the difference. So now we've got a really very loyal customer base that keeps on coming back because we're the closest cafe to them. We now feel like a place where they feel welcome. They feel like it's a place for them, and they spend more than just 10% off coffee now. They will buy coffees for others. They will buy breakfast. They'll buy lunch. They'll come down, and we've had to expand that particular cafe and knock through into the next rental because we needed more room for people to sit and to be able to linger and talk and have meetings, and so I've had to remodel that around that. So to me, that's probably the most obviously successful campaign I had was from one of my own businesses. But there's countless stories about how digital marketing through either paid ads or organic placement has really helped people out. But I think it's really the personal branding side for individuals to get them into a better position in their career and into a better position as maybe freelancers and contractors. I think the biggest opportunity for everyone is there rather than just running ads for a coffee shop. There's such an opportunity for people to market themselves, which sounds terrifying to a lot of people. I'm not a brand. Why would I market myself? I should be able to be hired based on my merits and based on the power of my resume. But the reality is you've got, how many hundreds of thousands of university students graduating every year with the same degrees as everybody else, with the same recommendations from professors as everybody else. And they're stepping onto a marketplace of limited jobs, coming into a period of time where we're facing some economic headwinds. So the reality is the job market will cool a little bit. And especially for those specific skilled jobs. And as you're discovering a skillaroo, people are coming out with a degree, but with zero experience or employable skills, and they need to then supplement those as well. So that whole process of taking a person and helping them to better push themselves forward as an option makes a massive difference, right down from rewriting a cover letter through to ensuring that what you say in your resume and cover letter is reflected on LinkedIn. Because trust me, they're all going there. Everyone who's going to hire you, they're going to check out your social media and they're going to pay a lot of attention to what you've got on LinkedIn. If you've got nothing going on there, you've got no volunteer experiences listed on anywhere, you've got no internships, you've got no specific skills you've shown that you've actually been able to achieve, then you're not looking great as an employable person. You're going to be someone who's very very high maintenance in the workplace, because you'll require 6 months of training before you're up to full speed. Nobody wants to hire someone that needs 6 months of training. They want to hire someone who can hit the ground and run. And I think there's a power in marketing for the person as much as there's power in marketing for the brand.
Yeah. Yeah, one thing about marketing a person that you mentioned and which I really resonate with is, if you met me a year or two ago and asked me, hey, why is your LinkedIn profile not up to date? Then I'd say, hey, I've got the credentials, like I've got what it takes. I can do the job. I've got the technical talent. They'll find me. That used to be my attitude. And I forgot that I was basically, it's a job market, right? And it's a market. And if you are able to be seen and heard by the right people, then you're going to be much better off than if you just kept to yourself. So that's wonderful advice. One thing I want to go into next is the opposite of what we just talked about. We spoke about how valuable personal branding and digital marketing can be for individual success and business success. But what about the flip side? Are there any pitfalls that you should not do if you're looking to advertise a business as an entrepreneur, or looking to get yourself heard and seen through the personal branding that you do in social media or elsewhere?
You can spend a lot of money before you've tested out whether anything is of appeal. I think we go in and say, oh, I've just got this startup. I'm going to put aside $50,000 for marketing. And you read marketing as advertising. So I'm going to spend $50,000 on advertising without any idea about what your advertising is, what your message is. And I think that's the greatest pitfall of marketing, is we do equate marketing and advertising as being the same thing. Advertising is a form of marketing, but so is networking. So is putting out leaflets. So is getting onto podcasts is a form of marketing as well. And none of these things necessarily cost you money. Marketing can be developing a consistent routine of posting on an organic social media presence in order to build an audience over time. That's just as successful marketing as, say, for instance, paying for ads on Facebook and Instagram. So I think the pitfall is that you plow tens of thousands of dollars into pushing forward a product that you haven't really checked to see if anyone actually needs it, wants it, desires it, and you haven't spent the time to learn the psychology behind marketing. You're just going, buy this, hire me. And it's like walking into a networking event and someone walks up to you and says, hi, I've just graduated as a digital scientist. I want a digital science job. Can you hire me? And I'm looking at that person, I'm going, why would I hire you? Why? You're annoying me already, so you haven't started on a good way. If we have an ad that comes up and just says, buy this, without any sort of background or psychology and knowing whether that's something I would even be interested in, it becomes an annoyance. My first encounter with you or your brand is being annoyed. That's not great. That's not a great place to start a really good relationship from. So the pitfalls would be that we tend to spend money before we understand what we're spending money on. And we tend to put forward a message that we haven't optimized for where that person who we're trying to send that message to is at in life. They are not necessarily at the point where they're ready to hand over their credit card. They're not necessarily at that point where they're ready to hire, but where they may be is curious. Where they may be is completely oblivious to this being a problem that they need to solve in their lives, but you make them aware of that. So it's understanding what a sales funnel is, understanding what the customer journey looks like, going from having no idea whether they need this or not, through to a curiosity that they might want it, to a raving desire that they need to buy it right now. But not everyone's at the same point at the same time. And I think the great pitfall in there is that you can spend so much money without ever really understanding who your customer is or how they think. And you're just wasting money by just putting out messages that nobody is ready to hear.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's top advice. Dante, I want to move on to talk about the tech landscape. I know that you're a technologist and you have experience working in the tech industry as well. But before we do that, I wanted to stay on personal identity and branding, and basically ask you about what advice do you have for graduates. For example, at Skillaroo, we help graduates and emerging tech professionals and accounting professionals successfully start their careers. We often emphasize the importance of building your personal identity and importance of being seen and noticed. Can you share your advice to those in the audience who are currently in the market looking for a job?
The best form of personal branding for someone looking to build a career, particularly in tech, is to do it while you're still at university. You're sharing your journey about what you're learning, what fascinating things you've done, the projects you're working on. You're sharing those with an audience. It might be an audience of 3 people, but you've still got that backlog of all that journey you're taking. Now, the second best time to do that is after you graduated, because you're still in a state of study brain. You haven't completely left that. You're not 10 years down the track where the idea of studying becomes very hard. Yes, you've just finished exams. Yes, you finished final assessments and you want to take a break and you want to rest. The reality is you're still got neural pathways laid down that are very fresh, which means that you can lay down more. So you continue to learn. As we've all known, you get out of university, it's very rare that you can just get out of university and get a job straight away in the thing you want to do and the role you want to have. You need to learn real skills. You need to apply those skills and have a track record of those skills. If you don't get that through a job, then you have to do that through your own interest in the subject you've got. So that's doing things like GovHack or the different code fairs that different universities have, where you've got the opportunity to participate in challenges and to learn new things. You have to keep learning. Get yourself a GitHub account and start pushing out updates to open source software, or pushing in your own pieces of software as well. Develop something of your own. Get an iPad and get Xcode and start building Swift applications and just play. This is why you got into tech in the first place, because it fascinates you. There's something about taking this unintelligible code and turning it into something amazing and useful for humanity. So play with those things. That's how you develop skills. That's how you develop a track record. But the learning process of that creates really interesting content. The most interesting content I follow on LinkedIn or on Instagram is where people are learning things. They're going, well, I'm a woodworker and I want to see if I could do some wood turning on plastic drink bottles. Let's see what I can make. Or they will be a coder and they're saying, I need to be able to get this kind of output, and they share the journey of getting there. Now, our risk-averse minds and a lot of our upbringing would say, I don't want to show people my secrets, because what if they copy me? I got like a really big obvious red flag here. We're all just copying something. Anyone who's coding really goes to Stack Overflow and just copies, or uses ChatGPT to generate code for them, or uses Copilot in GitHub. We're really just, it's not like we are, you're creating a new language of your own. You're just using it. Your ability is not necessarily the ability to code. It's the ability to be able to understand what that code means. So if you just take someone else's code, as long as you can read that and know what it means, you can make changes to it. You can make enhancements to it. You can clean that code up, add your comments where you've made changes, put it back into a repo on GitHub, and then you've got a brand new piece of software. You've made a contribution that's trackable and can be shared on social media. You think, well, who's going to care about this? I'll tell you who's going to care. People who will employ you. People who want to see what your problem-solving analysis skills are, not just someone who says, I've got this piece of paper, and that's all they've got. If you've got something which shows that journey, that shows you going from here to here to here, you don't have to do selfies every time you walk in the building at university. You don't have to be taking a photo of all your friends working hard at a code challenge. Share your work. I think that's where people really see what your capabilities are, is where you actually share that work. Otherwise, how would they know? How would they know what you can do?
Yeah, absolutely. And I give a massive thumbs up to everything that you just mentioned. One hashtag that I follow a lot is learn in public. It's a lot of basically techies and also people from other background as well who are basically picking up a new skill, but they're doing it online and they're putting it online as they sort of gradually take baby steps towards becoming some level of experts in that field. Dante, I want to talk about tech next, just the tech landscape and the ecosystem. You have been interested in tech at least for 24 and a half years since the turn of the millennium.
Since about 1982, actually, it was when I first picked up my first personal computer.
Oh, right. Let's go way back then. That's around 40 years ago. Okay, so obviously tech landscape is always evolving. It's it's like an organism that has a brain of its own, and there's so many new fascinating announcements that happen almost every week. Apple in their WWDC did some impressive work with AI, and a lot of other companies like Google and OpenAI have also got their hands over there. So maybe to start, just what's your overall opinion about the tech landscape, and what are you most excited about?
Well, the obvious one is AI, but I would say beyond AI, I'm really interested in the augmentation of human abilities that AI can play a part with, and robotics can play a part with, and electric stimulation can play a part with. I think biohacking is a really interesting technological frontier that's at crossroads of biological science and technology. It's like seeing people with Parkinson's, advanced Parkinson's disease, being able to, with just a small filament of wire being inserted in their brain and a very small amount of electrical pulse being put into their brain, take them from being uncontrollably shaking to being completely calm. And just seeing how that can change someone's life. When you see the cochlear implants, where you see a child who's born profoundly deaf, being able to now also be able to hear their parents for the first time, and seeing that change. And I still cry at those videos. I watch that video and I bawl my eyes out, because I see what technology has been able to give to people. I look at the ability for my father to reconnect with his brother. At the time he was about 70 years old, and he hadn't spoken to his brother in 23 years. And then we reconnected them through Facebook, and now they have an ongoing and healthy relationship with each other now in their 80s. So I see that interface with humans, with technology. I think sometimes we can get a little bit separated from the human and just get so focused on the technology. And you see this quite often. I was working with a bunch of IT graduates yesterday at a pitching competition, and you could tell they're really hardcore techies, because they're talking about the technology. They're not talking about the repercussions of that technology or the application. They're using a lot of buzzwords like efficiency and economic abilities and the ability to augment this and change that, and without seeing what the interface with humans is. So yes, we can take this idea of the paperless office, and we can cause all these amazing efficiencies, and we can have much better profit maximization. But the reality was that when I need to take notes very quickly, I'm still got a piece of paper on my desk to take that note down. So you're talking about human behavior. So I think the exciting part of the future for me is seeing what an Apple Vision Pro can do to help someone to work from different environments and do that in an efficient way. Taking a Meta Quest 3, which I think is the most underrated piece of technology we have out there. But that Meta Quest 3 is such an amazing multi-screen productivity environment that we don't even realize that that's what it does. We think it just plays games, but it's actually a far superior movie watching and productivity experience than even the Apple Vision Pro. It allows us to work on aircraft, it allows us to work from the beach, it allows us to work from wherever we want. These kind of technologies are only useful because they interface with the human. They have a biological interface. So a helmet that you put on, that you be able, and a headset that you can actually see through, and you can integrate, and you can interact with a virtual world in a very physical way. And then the medical technology, the technologies that augment us to be able to do more, exoskeleton suits, for instance, to be able to help people to be able to lift heavier loads, and then eventually training robotics to be able to do that for us. The challenge then will be is how do we not wipe out the entire workforce of jobs before we get something like universal basic income in place to be able to survive on. And I think that's, we'd ask people who were building the horses and who were training the horses and building the buggy whips and building carts and cartwheels back in the early 1900s, how they felt about it. The difference was that they had about a 50-year period with which it took to go from 100% horse and cart to 100% car. There was a 50-year period. We've got about 5 to 10 years before so much of what we do will be augmented, that coding is one of those first places that will be under danger. So I'm wanting to see what we can do that still requires human ingenuity, human creativity, and human oversight to be able to run things like AI, like metaverse related stuff, how we can make it an enhancement to human life, not just an economic margin boosting, efficiency breaking process. Like where do we find the value to humanity, not just the value to profit?
Thank you, Dante. That's really exciting, I think the next obvious thing that is worth asking here is how do you then take this ever-evolving tech landscape and so many interesting and awesome ideas, from biohacking to all the cool tools that make us more productive. How do you take that and then think about what could be promising business opportunities? How do you sort of look at it from an entrepreneur mindset in order to identify opportunities?
I think we look at it as a gold rush. And this is a metaphor we use quite often when there's new technologies. During a gold rush, there's the people who go and dig the holes and try to dig the gold out, or pan for the gold in the rivers. They make a bit of money, but mostly it's a gamble. Most people make nothing out of that. But the people who do make the money are the people who sell the shovels and the pans and the tents and the campsites and the food and the illegal grog and all that sort of stuff. It's the people who are alongside the tech. When a new car manufacturing plant opens up in a city, the car manufacturing plant will employ a couple of hundred people. But what you don't see is all the supporting stuff around that, from the people who supply the steel, to the people who supply the parts, to the people who keep the air conditioning in the factory running, to the people who feed the workers, to those who have to house the workers, to those who have to build the roads to support the infrastructure that 300 people can get to a factory easily without crashing their cars. So we tend to look at things like, and I'll mention AI again, we tend to look at AI as, I must become an AI developer. But there's very few people who can actually do that and do it really well. It's a highly sought after role, but we don't actually need that many of them. I know there's quick, go and learn AI, and know how to do all this and be a machine learning tech. The reality is we don't need many of those, because all you need is oversight, and the thing largely does it itself. But what we do need is all the support around it. So I think if you've got an idea and you've got an invention in your mind, you need to learn how to make that invention, make that prototype, or work with people who do know how to do it. So you're going to need industrial engineers, you're going to need metallurgists, you're going to need people who can bring those things together, someone who can do soldering on a motherboard to be able to create new computing and new circuit boards. You're going to need people around you. So you don't have to necessarily be an inventor. You can be someone who supplies a skill that inventor needs. And that's the beauty of innovation, is that not everyone in innovation needs to be an inventor. They can be an imitator. They can be someone who takes an existing technology and makes it better. That is innovation as well. They can be someone who takes the technology and uses it for a completely different purpose. So for instance, I was talking about a MetaQuest 3, that thing was made to play games, but it's got a secondary role in productivity and a tertiary role in entertainment, of passively watching movies and watching TV shows. It does such a great job of that. But then there's also the aftermarket people who are producing the extra bit of silicon that kind of comes up against your face to stop you getting big red marks on your face. There's people who are producing games. There's people who are producing other apps for that. There's people who are producing different colored straps so you can personalize it. People who are producing little stickers to put onto that. So there's all these this ecosystem around that one piece of inventive and transformational technology. You don't have to be the person who produces the transformational technology. You can be someone who makes great money on the side of it. And I can tell you now, there's two places which are utterly unrelated to technology, but every technology hub needs it. You go to the Googleplex, you go to Apple Park in Cupertino, and there's two things that you must have there: people who know how to make good coffee and people who know how to make food. Because it doesn't matter how much of a nerd you are, you still need to eat and you still need to drink. And so those things are still so important. So just remember, you can be in technology. It's like someone who's a cabin crew on a flight, they say that they work in aviation. Yeah, they do technically work in aviation. They're not the aviator. They don't make the plane or anything. They're basically a space waitress. So they are someone who still works in aviation, but without them, it wouldn't work. So you don't have to be the inventor. You can be the supporter, or you can be the mentor, or you can be the someone who supplies something that inventor or everyone else around them needs. It's never just one thing. There's a whole ecosystem around every product and every innovation.
Thank you, Dante. That's a really interesting way of looking at things. When people are digging for gold, go sell shovels. Find a niche somewhere in that ecosystem and be of value. And I think I saw a meme on LinkedIn about how NVIDIA selling their graphics card are the modern day equivalent of selling shovels to people who want to dig for gold or build large language models. The next part of our conversation today, Dante, is going to be a rapid fire section. So in this section, I'll ask you a question. The goal will be for you to respond in the least amount of words as possible. So there might be a question like, like beaches or oceans, and obviously, beaches or mountains, and you pick one. It won't be as short as that, but the goal is to keep it brief. So the first question for rapid fire round is, what's the most underrated social media platform for businesses and why?
X, because so many people have left that platform. That it remains the home of all the geeks, the freaks, and the tech nerds. They're all on there. So if you want to be able to reach that crowd, you've got a built-in audience there, and very few others seem to be doing that right now.
Awesome. That's great. The next one is, what's the most important skill for entrepreneurs to develop in today's digital age?
Communications. It's the number one most sought after in the recent ACS Digital Pulse survey done with Deloitte Access Economics. They identify that communication skills are the number one skill that is in desire for those who are hiring tech workers right now, which says that there's a big problem with communication skills when it comes to IT people. So comms.
Awesome. Yeah, I think I agree there as well. What's the favorite part of what you do?
It's the one thing I don't get paid for, which is mentoring. Mentoring people through their careers, through developing their careers, to finding what they want to do in life. I find that the most rewarding thing, especially when I see a friend of mine who is someone who I mentor, going from having uncertainty about whether to start a business to now employing 5 people and running a very successful business.
Wonderful. And the next one was, how do you spend your time outside of work?
Watching videos and learning. I don't really have many other pursuits, although I must admit I wake up every morning at 5 a.m. and go to the gym. So I spend about an hour and a half at the gym every day. So I think that physical health is what powers my ability to do so much brain work.
Awesome. Yep. And the final one is, what's your favorite piece of technology?
Wow. Probably my Google Pixel 6 Pro. It's getting really old now, but I've never owned a phone quite as good as it, and it's still working as well as it did from the day I put it out of the box to what it is now. Awesome photos, awesome power, still fast, still snappy. But I have to say that my current phone, which is a now 3.5-year-old phone, is still amazing.
Is that the one with the visor?
Yeah,
the back?
yeah. It's the first generation that had that.
Yeah, that's a pretty good looking phone. All right, that's the end of our rapid fire round. We are nearing the end of the podcast. So where can our listeners follow your work and connect with you online?
You can search for me on YouTube. I've got about 400 and something videos on there now. I've been putting videos on there for years, but the most recent videos are probably the most insightful ones. The previous ones are a lot of how-to, and they're basically re-recorded webinars. I'm very, very super active on LinkedIn. I'm on there all day. It's my number one place to generate new work and new leads from. And I generally, if you want to get hold of me, sending me a message there is the easiest way to get my attention. So you find that linkedin.com/in/Dante St. James.
And that will also be in the description of the podcast as well. Thank you, Dante. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show today. Thank you so much for sharing your journey, your insights, and your wisdom with us. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning into another episode of the Path to Tech podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, please leave a review and comment and share it with your friends and colleagues. Stay tuned for more information, stories, and insights from tech industry professionals. Until next time, keep exploring and keep innovating. Thank you and goodbye.